Get ready before life happens. The podcast helping you navigate life's what ifs.
Welcome to Get Ready Before Life Happens, where we explore how to navigate life's what ifs with integrity and purpose. I'm your host, Tony Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Melana Carbary, Private Wealth Manager at Burning River Advisory Group and founder of enlightenHer. Melana, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, excited to get into the conversation. You're doing some amazing things. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your origin story and how did it inspire your mission to help women say, I can?
Ooh, my origin story. Yeah, I that's a great question. And I actually really love my story of how I kind of landed in this role in this position. And it's really one that my mom is at the heart of and the center of, and I'm very proud of that. I didn't intend on getting into financial services. It's not what I, set out for through college. I was actually trying to apply for a job in a completely unrelated field, and that job required me to post my resume online. At the time, it was Hot Jobs. And so I was like, okay, well, this is how I have to apply for this job. Well, when you put your resume out there like that, everyone who's trying to hire through that site can see it. And so firm at the time reached out to me about a financial advisor position. And I'd always had it in my mind, gosh, if I had to go into the business world, I'd want to go into finance. I have no idea why. That was just, but I just knew that. And so this job opportunity came along, and I was like, it's completely different than what I was going for, but I decided to take a look at it. In a couple interviews, through the process later, I was talking to my mom and I was like, I think I'm going to take this job. It's got benefits. It's, got like different things that you'd be fortunate to have in your first job. And I never will forget what she said to me. She's like, well, Melana, I think it's a really great opportunity because it has benefits and all these other things. But she said, it's your first job out of college and you're going to learn so much about finance. And even if this job doesn't work out, what you learn will stick with you. It'll stay with you. What a great foundation for the rest of your life. And I thought at the time it sounded wise. And now that I'm 20 years in, the wisdom in that is so powerful.
I love that. And actually, my major in college was finance, and it was more not necessarily that I wanted to go into finance, but it was like, okay, well, hopefully I'm going to make some money, so I better figure out what to do with it. And then, I ended up staying in financial
In the
services,
finance.
but
Yeah, yeah,
but that's
yeah.
where we go.
It is a great career because you learn from others in terms of like our clients that we work with and seeing them, their successes and their failures and their struggles. So we learn from them and certainly our own experiences and those, closest to us. So, and all of the training that we get exposed to. So yeah, that really is as I got into the career, I realized that there's, especially 20 years ago, there were far fewer women. That is starting to shift and get better. But as we continue to develop our client base here, we realized that there was a big need for female first financial engagement, whether that's, depending at whatever level the woman needs. And that is actually what brought about eventually enlightenHer. And again, it's another story where my mom is sort of at the center of for me. So my colleague wanted to uh, do some type of start some type of business where we could take all of the knowledge that we've accumulated over the years working one-on-one with clients and get that into a format where we could share that with people at either a lower or a no cost. So we could get all of our knowledge disseminated out into the world. So instead of these things being written or created by financial bloggers who paid off all their debt and are writing about it, like it's coming from CFPs, financial advisors who've been classically trained and have worked for 20, 25 years with clients. And so my boss had this idea, he wanted to do this, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, he's the idea man, and I'm like the dream breaker. I'm like, we can't do all that. That's too much, whatever. But interestingly, around the time where he really came up with this concept, my mom had been battling cancer and couldn't work, but had the ability to do some things. So she was volunteering at the local food bank, and she was helping women in hard times. And she said, I never will forget her coming to me. She called me Lena, and came to me and she's like, Lena, you guys have to figure out how to help these women. And I get kind of choked up thinking about it because it was one time where Ed had this idea, and I was like, my mom said that to me it was all happening at the same time, and I was like, we have to do this. And so Enlighten Her was really born from that, from that desire. My mom didn't make it, and so it carries even more weight, that desire to kind of take her wishes and try and make them a reality. So helping women, say yes and take control of their finances.
Well, that's so important. And one, I'm sorry about your mom.
Oh,
That's,
thanks.
always hard.
Yeah.
But in thinking about this is one thing you said at the very beginning that I love is that we learn from our clients. And I think the best advisors are the ones who actually do incorporate learnings from our clients. But I think what you're talking about is a need for female first. It's something that's talked a lot about in the industry. And the industry is still very male dominated. So there definitely is a need for that. So there's so much that you said. And the other thing too, one of the purposes of me starting this show is like there is a lot of financial information out there from people who, may be a little bit out of their depth on what they're talking about. And so it's balancing out because those people are very good at bringing people in to think about money,
Hmm.
but they don't necessarily know investing, let's say.
Yeah.
And that's
Hmm.
where it gets tricky.
We need to mash them and us up because I don't feel like we're as good bringing people in, but we can talk the talk once you get in here. We can, we got the content to back it. Like we know what we're talking about, to your point. It's too bad we can't like take both of those and mash them up. Maybe that exists out there.
Well, interestingly enough, I am working on a project which I'm going to be announcing more on the show with the Plutus Foundation, which sponsors the Plutus Awards. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do is because there are a lot of financial planners like yourself who are creating financial education content and mashing them together with personal finance bloggers and podcasters, the people who've created actually very large communities
That's
and
that's
followings.
exciting.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it. I've had a lot of guests on from all, different perspectives on this podcast. Some people who are just out there with large audiences and others who, like yourself, are professionals with
Mhm.
professional experience, because I believe that there's a spectrum out there. And, like we were talking pre-show about the services that you provide at Burning River, versus the services that are provided through enlightenHer. And it is a spectrum. And
Yep.
everybody's going to start out, that 20-year-old with her first job is going to start out as an enlightenHer person. And hopefully at some point in her career will, I don't want to say graduate because I don't like that word, but transition to
Mhm.
being a Burning River
Yeah.
client. And I think that's something we need to recognize, that there's a place for everyone on the
Yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm so proud of with Enlighten Her is that now when someone asks me, whether it's a client, whether it's a family member, or just someone I meet, in conversation, if they ask me what resources, like how can you help this person? So and so is going through a divorce. How can you help? Well, we've got these amazing resources, and I can send them right there to those resources. There's some free and some, like I said, low cost resources. First job, a client, her daughter gets her first job. Can you help steer her in the right direction? Oh, we sure can. We've got, some freebies on that, and we also have coaching. And so it just feels so good to know that we don't have to do it all. We have these resources that we put together that can help women where they need to be helped, and really leverage our knowledge without having to, we can't leverage any more of our time at this point. We're kind of maxed out as far as that goes. So it feels really good to know that we've got something for everyone. Um, And if we don't have something, we'll build it, because if there's a niche that we're missing, we'll build it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And I think that's something people don't realize sometimes, with CFPs and, everybody talks about like the minimum assets under management or hourly
Mhm.
fees is that, as you point out, sometimes there's a capacity. Well, there always is a capacity to
Yeah.
how many clients we can serve. So, let's talk a little bit since we're already on the subject of enlightenHer. Tell us a little bit about more. What is enlightenHer? Who does it serve? What kind of resources do you provide?
Yeah, so it is a female first financial education company. So the goal there is to provide education and at an entry level is really the best way to say it. So for the woman who's starting out in life, starting over, who's maybe going through a divorce, who's tackling debt, who I think about a great analogy is crawl, walk, run. And sometimes you just need to roll over. And I think enlightenHer is that like we can help you roll over and start crawling if that's where you are. And that's because that's okay. We all began there. We have to remember that. There's no shame in where you are. We all began out of college or out of school or out of the mom and dad's house, like we had to roll over first, right? We had to get out, get a job, and just start somewhere. Um, and that's the goal of enlightenHer is to reach those women who just need to roll over and then start crawling, and then we can help you start walking and start running. And so there's a lot of content on the site, and we continue to add new content. So there's one of the things I think we're most proud of is our resources page, and it's just free resources. There's a starting out resource for the young woman getting her first job, starting over for the woman who maybe lost a spouse, lost a job, went through a divorce, who feels like she's starting over maybe in midlife. There's resources for you. There's some really great journal prompts if like you've got these like money ideas in your head that aren't serving you. There are divorce. There's a piece specifically for women going through divorce. On along the lines of divorce, we actually have a divorce course. So if you are in the earlier stages of contemplating divorce, or if this was just thrust on you completely out of the blue and you are like just standing there thinking, what on earth? I don't even know the first step to take. We have a course called Divorce Navigator. It's a low-cost offering that is phenomenal and designed to walk you through the legal, financial, and emotional things to consider, aspects that you'll probably be faced with. We have blogs, so we put out a newsletter, and so lots of blogs and articles like from the newsletter that kind of go into the blog. So lots of resources there. Again, just depending on what you're looking for. And we have financial coaching. That's the I think the last piece is financial coaching. So one-on-one, if you're just needing some help getting past some barriers, if that's whether it's emotional barriers, money blocks that you have, money myths that you have that are holding you back from taking those first steps. We have a wonderful coach who is there to help women work through that so that they can begin to take those steps.
Well, that's awesome. And one of the things that I comes up on the show sometimes too is women being prepared before they become solo, because we so often see that is that the man manages at least the
Mhm.
investment portfolio. The woman may run, sort of the day-to-day budgeting and all these things,
Yeah.
paying the bill, but the man handles the investment portfolio.
Hmm.
And so I think it's important that women know that there's resources like this so that you can start before you become solo.
Yeah. I think if women, empowering women to be involved in their finances, it doesn't mean they have to take control, over their finances, but to be a part of the conversation, to understand what is where, the decisions that are being made, to understand if there is a relationship with an advisor, to be a part of that, to be comfortable with that person. I will say we've had clients come to us for the main reason, sole reason, because the wife wasn't comfortable with the previous advisor. And it was important to the husband that the wife be comfortable with the advisor. So we call those our enlightened men because they have the wherewithal to realize that, hey, statistically, if I'm a little older, even if we're the same age, I'm probably going to pass away before my wife. And I want her to be okay. And this outfit, whether it's Burning River or enlightenHer, they're catered to her and she's comfortable with them. So the more we can empower women to be a part of those conversations, to find if it's a company like enlightenHer or a company like Burning River Advisory Group or whatever other, financial firm where they feel like they're being spoken to, they enjoy going to the meetings, have a seat at the table. It's incredibly important. And not just because every marriage is going to end in divorce, but because your husband might pass away, right? You might find yourself dealing with this stuff on your own, and that's not when you want to be learning. You ideally want to learn and be up to speed beforehand.
Yeah, well, and as you talk about it, is the majority of women are going to be the head of their household at some point. Either,
Mhm.
there's a still high rate of gray divorce. There
Yep.
is the really high rate of widowhood. So it's not necessarily, as you point out, something that's planned. It's
Yeah.
just with longevity and statistics
Mhm.
and everything else, the odds are really high that a woman is going to need to manage her money.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so this is critical stuff. Um, so yeah, to frame that, and I think the other thing that you said is that as a husband, this is a way of saying I love you, is to take care of this. This is a part of your planning, that it goes beyond a will and a trust. And you said something that I think is really critical for financial planners to hear, is that the woman needs to be seen and heard. And I can't tell you how many times that has come up on this podcast, with a lot of my guests have been female CFPs, or, divorce, people who have different roles as, in advising in the divorce process. And that's something that comes up all the time, is seeing and hearing. So if you're an advisor and you're just talking to the husband because you guys both like sports and you go golfing and everything, you're really missing out, and you're
Yes.
doing your client a disservice by
Mhm.
not talking to the spouse, who may be sitting there and seemingly very happy, but not really.
Yeah,
So,
she's noticing. I can tell you she's noticing. If you're not looking at her, engaging her, asking her, is she comfortable? Does she have any questions? What are her goals? What does she like, dislike? She's recognizing it. Statistically, most women will leave their, I think it's like 50% of women, I don't know the exact stat, but will leave their financial advisor when their husband passes away, and it's for the exact reason you just named. She's not heard or seen. She maybe never really liked the person to begin with. Um, the financial services industry, it makes sense. It was built by men for men, but that's because women couldn't own assets. They couldn't inherit money. They couldn't have money,
that's
right?
right.
And so it's I feel like, and I knock the industry a lot. It just needs to get caught up. It wasn't
There you go.
designed.
That's very nice. It needs to get caught up. And the stat that I have seen is actually closer to 80-90% of
Wow.
widows will leave their
Okay.
current financial
I'm
planners.
glad you
And
know it better than me.
well, I've had on a
Knew it
couple
was high.
yeah, I've had on a couple people, for people watching and listening, go back and check out my conversations with Kathy Balasek and then Megan Kopka from the Modern Widows Club, because they both
Oh, yeah.
really cover the issue
I love
for
this.
widows. So if you are a widow, or if you have a friend who's a widow, those are two episodes that really will be hopefully useful to you, where they talk a lot about the resources that are available to widows. So a shout out to the Modern Widows Club. So
Yeah, they're doing a wonderful job. I get their emails and I just think it's just amazing to have an organization who is there for widows. It is not an easy organization to like be a part of in the sense as like a provider to them. They're really vetting. Um, they seem to have very high standards, which I appreciate. We need that for our widows.
we do, and they do a fantastic job. I mean, the point of this episode is not to talk about the
Yeah.
Modern Widows Club, but we definitely need to give them a shout out, because Carolyn Moore, the founder, is doing an incredible job. And so, yeah, so it's a great organization. So, to get back to the topic of women is, when did you come to that realization that women were underserved in financial services? Because we all get that first job and we're like, hey, everything's great. And then all of a sudden it's like reality hits.
Yeah. Well, very early in my career, there was a lot of pressure by management at the time for me to go into management myself. And I was initially interested in it. I was very ambitious and like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to move up the ladder. I'm very thankful that I didn't. It would have been a fantastic experience, but I think it would have slowed me down in terms of actually getting where we are today with Burning River Advisory Group. Um, so, if I just decided that wasn't the path for me, I was going to just focus on being an advisor, not just, but focus on being an advisor and growing our business. And it was probably about 5 or 6 years in where, and my business partner, I call him my boss, he's 5 years ahead of me. So he would have been about 10, 11 years in. We looked at our practice at that time and said, who are our clients? Like, what's the demographics of our clients? And we realized at that point that we had a lot of single women as clients in our book business. And when we looked at that and kind of asked ourselves why, we felt strongly that it was because we were doing comprehensive financial planning. It's a goal-based conversation. It is data-driven. We're gathering data. We're assessing where a client is today, asking questions about where they want to go, what do they want to achieve, and we're helping them build a plan to achieve it. I think of it as a roadmap. And, the old stereotype, men won't stop and ask for directions, but women will. It's kind of what we were thinking about at the time. And so we just kind of kept our foot on the gas pedal and said, this is our model. This is what we're going to keep doing. We're going to start to hold ourselves out there, though, as advisors for women. Something's clearly connecting here, and it hasn't let up. Like, we work with so many single women, whether they're single by choice or not. And we work with a lot of households where the woman is either the leader, she's the one who said, we're working with Burning River Advisory Group, or it's that conversation where the husband said, I feel really comfortable that you guys will take care of my wife if and when something happens to me. So it was very organic. But at some point when we realized it, we said, we're doing this. This is underserved. We know we can just look at the industry around us and know that a lot of these men, we just know they're not talking to women the right way. There's a reason. We knew the stats. We knew that women were underserved. Um, Another one of the studies showed that women wanted financial advice, like true advice, planning work, and they were looking for it but not finding it, which is really sad when you hear that. You're like, they're actually looking for it, they're seeking it out, they want it, they can't find it.
Yeah. So, what would be your advice then to a male financial planner? Because I've heard this so much, is like, how do I talk to women? Which to me seems silly because we all have, a wife or a mom or a sister. What do you say to those men who are like, hey, I'm not comfortable talking to women in my practice?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to make you comfortable.
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't have a good answer for that. I was in church this past Sunday, and what came to mind was caring. And so if we care enough, we will take the right action, right? And our actions may not be perfect, but we're going to at least get directionally correct. And I think if you start with that and ask yourself, is this an audience I really care about serving? Not care about serving because it serves my needs, but care about serving because I can serve their needs. I know I can serve their needs. I want to. I see this as more than just a market. Women are half of the population, so we're not a niche market here. So if you truly care about serving women, the females in your practice better, or serving the women that are out there who are looking for good guidance and advice, I think that caring, if that's not there, you're not going to do a job. Women are going to realize, they're going to pick up on your inauthenticity. So I think I would go back to that and just say, well, if you really care, start taking action on that, being authentic, and finding ways to help and serve women using your skills, right? You're an advisor. You know how to serve a client. If you take that and apply it to women, women do have some specific needs. We tend to live longer than men. We tend to have smaller retirement accounts because we've taken time off to have families to care for our aging parents. So our pensions are often smaller as a result of that as well. And we are likely to be on this earth without a husband at some point in our lives. So those are just right off the top challenges that we face. But advisors they know how to handle those challenges. I think what they know less is connecting with a woman. Look her in the eyes, ask her questions. It's okay to get into feelings. Women care about feelings. And they do want to be listened to and acknowledge that they're heard.
Well, I think you said something that's so important. Listen,
Yeah.
and listen with intention, not just listen to, think of the next thing that you're going to say. Listen
Yeah,
to
listen for the
reflect.
real need that is in there. She will tell you what she's worried about, what she cares about, what her need is. So if you listen for that and then, stop, think and determine the best way to help her. And women want planning. They don't want someone who's goes over a portfolio and it's not a measuring stick for them. Do I have more than you? What's your net worth versus mine? Your rate of return versus mine? Women don't care about that. They care about having enough. Am I secure? Am I going to be okay? Do I have enough? That's their language. So that's why planning matters, because planning is a way to tell a woman, show her, these are the goals you've given me. This is all of the information you provided. You have enough. Or maybe you don't have enough, but hey, let's talk about how to solve that. Advisors can help them solve it. That's what we're trained to do. But we've just got to get it into a form that women can hear, that we care about. I don't care about my net worth relative to yours. I care about, can I help my nieces go to college? Can I have independence? And can I have money, my lifestyle for the rest of my life?
Yeah, and that's something that I reflect on with the women and men that I've dealt with over my careers is that women are focused on those. I want to say the macro issues is like, I was an insurance expert, and so I worked predominantly for financial planners. But that was always the question. The women, well, not always. There's never any black and white,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
but typically the women had said, well, is this policy going to take care of what we're trying to accomplish? Where
Yes.
the male might say, well, is this the best deal? And,
Exactly.
that's both things are important, but, understanding that I think is definitely key. So, I want to talk about mental shifts and strategies because some, women oftentimes feel shame and guilt around money. What mental shifts or strategies do you feel help women move from shame and guilt to confidence and clarity around their money?
It's a very good question. It's the $1 million question for Enlighten Her. How do we help women move past that? And it is different. The shame is rooted in different things for every woman. And so I think really, you know, uncovering where that comes from, money myths is something we talk about a lot. And so we have been passed down, and it's not just women, this applies to everyone. We've been passed down money myths. One of the things my mom always used to say is, well, you work hard, you deserve it. That's a money myth. That doesn't serve you in most cases, especially when you're young, just starting out and have very limited income and you're balancing multiple goals. And so, acknowledging, I think, what some of those stories that you tell yourself are and asking yourself, does that story serve me? Where did it come from? And is it really serving me? We inherit these things. They're not inherently ours, but maybe some of them are. Maybe some of them it's a story we've begun to tell ourselves, and that story might be rooted in a negative experience or something that happened to us. And so I think we really do have to get to the root of that. Debt is one that carries probably the most shame for people. And that is one of those that, carrying around the shame and not taking action isn't helping you move forward. So how do we help you bust the shame? And I think a lot of that can come if we start to take the right action steps. So I think, you're keeping your head in the sand, you're in a cycle at that point. But if to break that cycle, can we help you take steps, take forward, moving steps that are designed to help get you out of this. And we have very much a don't look back mentality. Our Burning River advisory group, so we're from Cleveland, our river caught on fire. And it made national news, and that's a whole other story. But it made national news, and they said this fire was in Cleveland, and so we got the reputation for our burning river. Anyways, out of that, the EPA was created, and our river is clean now. A couple of years ago, they were like, you could eat the fish out of the Cuyahoga, and that was kind of shocking for a lot of people. But our river is clean, the resources and information going into the Great Lakes and studying the Great Lakes, and the idea that the EPA was created out of this. And now Cleveland is just beautiful. Downtown is beautiful. And so that idea of like, don't look back, like your history doesn't define you, but you've got to take action moving forward. So I think I'm very much a to-do list, a taskmaster. I'm very much about action, forward momentum.
I love that. And I'm writing this down to make sure that, this is pops in the show notes. Your history doesn't define you, but you have to take action because I think that it's so easy to let our history define us, and that's a human instinct to do that just because, breaking free can be hard and it can be scary and so many other things that,
And depending on the level, like the depth of what got you here, it could be medical, it could be something really traumatizing to you. We acknowledge that there are more layers than just taking good financial action. Like you may have an emotional layer that we're not equipped, we're not therapists, we're not equipped to help you work through. Coaching, the money, I'm sorry, the coaching under enlightenHer, the coach there is more tuned into those emotional issues, challenges. And so I think that in partnership with some action, some good financial action steps can really be a good combination. I don't know that you can muscle your way out of everything with just taking action. I think there are some deeper um, uh, things that do need to be addressed. And yeah, I think it's important to address those as well. We have a client, and I just thoroughly have enjoyed working with her. And she has worked on with a therapist as well as with us. And the change that she's been able to accomplish in the last year to 18 months has been truly remarkable and just amazing to witness.
that's awesome. And, and there's the growth of financial therapists, which is a
Yep.
very new field. And
Yes. I'm
also,
so
I'll
glad you
give
mentioned that. Yes.
yeah. And I don't know if you know Rakim Sabri. He writes about overcoming financial trauma.
Okay.
And
I'm writing
so,
that down.
yeah, so for people who are watching and listening, Rakim's been on the show. He's going to be on the show again soon, talking about his new book, just about overcoming financial trauma and overcoming generational financial trauma
Oh,
for
yeah.
minorities. And what that's
Mm-hmm.
like is because, if you're coming from a place where your family didn't have money historically,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be dealing with some of these issues because money is going to be new to your family. So,
Yes.
these are real things. We may be talking about it as something, the two of us, but that this exists and these are real
Yeah.
issues. So if you're thinking like, oh boy, this isn't, this is some hokey pokey or whatever,
Mm-mm.
this is real.
It sure is. And it is for many people, it's the barrier that's holding them back. It's working through the shame, the guilt, and no matter what that's rooted in, that is the barrier. I think it's the biggest challenge to getting people to take action is to start to work through, that shame, that guilt, that um, like you said, whether it's that family trauma or historical trauma of their race or their gender. I think that stuff it holds so many people back.
Yeah, and I want to go back to one thing that you say is because we tend to forget about it. It wasn't that long ago that a woman can open up a credit card on her own or take
Yep.
out a mortgage.
Hmm.
So,
Couldn't inherit money, inherit
it
property.
can, that's
Hmm.
right. And that's in my lifetime, not your lifetime. I know you're younger, but that's been in my lifetime. And so for a lot of people who are watching and listening in the show, you may remember that time. So these are things that are changing. So when you think about some of the stuff, it is relatively new.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think
so
we're very much, we don't want someone to feel a victim. And so I don't share these things to like encourage a victim mentality, but I think one of the things we can do to start getting past some of the shame and the guilt is to acknowledge the reason it exists and that it's not all on you. Perhaps there's things that bad choices you've made, right? That have not helped you move forward, but acknowledging too that you probably weren't raised. I was fortunate. I was raised by a mom who was like, I take care of the money. But a lot of women weren't. And generationally, if you're in an older generation, that may not have even been a thing that your mom thought to teach you because it wasn't something she ever could have, right? So these things exist, and again, not to like, we don't want to be a victim of our history and our past, but I think it's a validation as to why it's such a struggle for women. And when we know that, we can say, well, it's different now, and my responsibility for myself and for future generations is to start to change that cycle, to say we can have money, we do have money, and we need to be good stewards of it for ourselves and our kids.
definitely, and to role model for our daughters uh,
Yes.
going forward. So, to wrap up, I have what are called the Get Ready Hot Take Trio. And these are three quick questions I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
The first one is, what's one money myth you're trying to break?
One money myth we're trying to break. I still think the biggest one that we come up against is that finance is boring and it's for men. We still come up against that one, and I would love for women to have more of an interest in money, in finances, to break that very long-standing myth that this isn't for us.
Yeah, money, women can do money. I've heard that
Sure can.
from
I'm proof.
so many. Yeah, well, exactly. You're a certified financial planner. That is all the proof we need.
Mhm.
So, and people can go back and listen to the hundreds of female guests that I've had on this show who are money experts
Yes.
for further proof. So,
Yes.
it's not just you,
Yeah.
Melana. Oh boy, um, people could go back. So,
Yeah.
let's get out the time machine for a minute before I bungled your name. If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about money, what would you tell your younger self?
I, so confession time. When I did start my job as a financial advisor, I had access to a 401k and I didn't get it started right away. Oh boy, if I could go back and change that, I would, that the opportunity at a young age to save, even if it's a tiny amount, is so huge for your future self. And thankfully, I didn't waste too much time, but I regret that one still.
Yeah, well, we all make mistakes. Mine was credit cards. You know,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I was in college and I was a finance major, but we didn't learn anything about credit cards. And
Oh, no. And I heard this one didn't happen during my time in college, but Ed is 10 years older than me. And he said that there would be credit card companies were on college campuses. They have, I think, since disallowed that, but think about that.
Yeah, that was the case with me when I was
Yep.
in college, is they were at the student union, there were
Hmm.
credit card, and they were giving you incentives to sign
Oh,
up
yeah.
for, like bags and shirts or, whatever,
Mhm.
really
Things that broke
trinkets
college kids
compare.
wanted.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's, there's predatory stuff out there that's a topic for another show, but yeah,
Yeah.
is to start saving early, but also don't be hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Is we're all going to make money mistakes. It happens.
Mhm.
It's how you deal with it moving forward. You and I have both recovered.
Yep,
So,
we sure did. We sure did. Yeah,
so
thankfully.
that, yeah. So that's all you need to do. It's the changes you do going forward. So to
Yeah.
close out, what is your number one tip for changing the way we think about money?
Let me think about that a minute. My number one tip for changing the way we think about money. I thought of this earlier when we were talking. We talk about money. We want clients to talk about money and to treat it like a relationship. If you have a spouse or significant other or a niece or nephew or children, you invest in those relationships. They're ongoing. You hope that they're with you your entire life, and they're interesting and fascinating, and you love these people. Now, money is not people. We're not replacing people with money. But I think if we approached money with this idea that this is interesting. This is about me, my life, what I'm accomplishing for my family. And this is something that is going to be with me the rest of my life. It is a relationship. And I think money would be a lot more interesting if we approached it as a relationship instead of as like this transactional thing that we would rather ignore or pretend like it didn't exist. It wasn't real. It's going to be with you for the rest of your life. So having a healthy relationship with money, finding it interesting because it's your money, your life. It's what's going to fund and support your future and your children and your significant other. I think that's so interesting, and just a different take on money. It's what it's doing for you.
I love that. And you said two things in there that I just think are phenomenal. One is that, you do need to have a relationship with money because it's intertwined with everything that you do, and it's not going away at a certain point,
Nope.
no matter how rich you get,
Mhm.
there's still,
Oh yeah,
you're
more to
still
manage.
dealing with it. Yeah.
Hmm.
But the other thing too that I think is equally important that you said is it's your money and your life, and you can't let anybody else tell you how to live. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to good advice, but
Certainly.
it is your decision at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So I love
Yeah.
that.
How do you want to live your life and look at money as a way to help you accomplish that? The beauty of women, too, is that in working and planning for women, they certainly want to live their own lives, and they should, and that's wonderful. But the conversations is so much around like, I want to help these people. I want to give back. I want to do good things. Like, women are so giving and altruistic. And so I think the amazing thing is the power of money in women's hands and what the good that women do with the resources when we have them. And so if you can, get yourself kind of past guilt, past shame, and making that forward progress and realizing, hey, I'm going to do good with this, and be able to achieve, the goals and vision I have for my family and for the things I want to do in the world. Money is your tool to get there, and it's very powerful.
I love that. Money is your tool for good. I'm just going to shorten it to that.
Money is your tool
S-
for good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Melena, where can listeners learn more about you, your work with Burning River Advisory Group, and enlightenHer?
Yeah, so we have websites for both companies. That is the best place to go to learn more about us. So Burning River is www.burningriver, A as in Apple, G as in George.com. Stands for Burning River Advisory Group. And then Enlighten Her is www.enlightenher.com. And through both of those platforms, you can reach out to us. So if you had questions about enlightenHer or questions about Burning River Advisory Group, there's a contact us on those pages. enlightenHer, you can sign up for our newsletter. I highly encourage it if you're interested in learning more. It's just a once a month newsletter that we send out. And then if we're doing any webinars or we do some free things monthly, we'll let you know about them. There's the resources page is the one I had mentioned earlier that I'm super proud of on enlightenHer. Divorce Navigator is on enlightenHer. So you'll find it all if you go to that site. Burning River Advisory Group is more tailored towards the person who's built up. So we talked about crawl, walk, run. They're more in like that walk into running mode. And so there's a lot you can learn about us on that site in terms of our process and whatnot.
Fantastic. And for people who are watching and listening and have access to the show notes, the links will be in the show notes. So Melana, thanks for sharing your journey and insights today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about who we are and the work we're trying to do.
Well, you're doing great work, and I appreciate, again, thank you for your time, and thank you everyone as always for tuning in to this episode of Get Ready. If this episode helped you change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and to tell a friend. You can also go to my website at tonystewart.com to join the Get Ready movement and receive access to my free library of resources. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.